This is Radio Health Journal. I'm Nancy Benson. This week, baseball pitchers and the injuries they suffer.
There are upwards of 30% of major leaguers now who have Tommy John scars on their elbow. And honestly, I think that's going to pale compared to future years.
Throwing caution to the wind when Radio Health Journal returns.
When it comes to health insurance, understanding what you'll pay for covered services, prescriptions, and supplies is important, especially if you have a chronic condition like diabetes. Now, there's a new tool to help people with diabetes save money on test strips. Know My Copay is a website and nationwide telephone service that tells you the lowest copays for the top 5 brands of diabetes test strips in the market based on your individual health plan. Here's consumer advocate and nationally syndicated columnist Jim Miller.
Figuring out health coverage can be confusing. Know My Copay is a valuable free service that can help people maximize their healthcare dollar. By comparing the out-of-pocket cost of the various diabetes test strips available, people can make educated decisions about the products they use.
Know My Copay is sponsored by LifeScan, maker of One Touch brand blood glucose monitoring systems. Find the lowest copay for your test strips at knowmycopay.com or by calling toll-free 1-844-807-8936. That's knowmycopay.com.
We're fast approaching the first milestone of the Major League Baseball season, Memorial Day, when we can start to get a good feel for the teams likely to compete till the playoffs. Fans are tallying the statistics that are so much a part of the game: wins, losses, on-base percentages, and unfortunately, season-ending injuries. 1 or 2 stars lost for the year can be the difference between a World Series championship and not even making the playoffs. And no players are more likely to be hurt than pitchers.
There are upwards of 30% of major leaguers now who have Tommy John scars on their elbow. And honestly, I think that's going to pale compared to future years.
That's Jeff Passan, baseball columnist for Yahoo Sports and author of the new book, The Arm, Inside the Billion-Dollar Mystery of the Most Valuable Commodity in Sports.
Major League Baseball this year is going to spend upwards of $1.7 billion on pitchers, just in the major leagues. That doesn't count the ones that it signs in the draft or signs internationally via free agency. And that number really was the impetus behind this book. I asked myself a question. At the time, it was $1.5 billion, and it was, how can baseball spend $1.5 billion on something it doesn't understand?
Baseball may not understand the alchemy that makes a frontline, injury-resistant pitcher, but Passan says it's not for lack of trying.
They've tried all sorts of different things. They've tried throwing more. They've tried throwing less. They've tried piggybacking players, which means pitching them only a couple innings at a time to start the game and then bringing in a second starter. They've tried limiting the number of pitches that are thrown, not just in a game, but in an entire season. And it is a culture of fear these days in baseball because the money is large enough that if a player gets injured, it feels like you are positively wasting not just the salary that he's being paid, but any opportunity cost and any chance of getting surplus value out of it.
Some teams are investing big money in trying to find the secret. But even gurus who know everything about the mechanics of pitching can't guarantee that the team's star closer won't blow out an elbow ligament.
If there is somebody out there like that, baseball teams will pay a lot of money for him or her to do that. And if you think about it, I mean, injury prevention is the holy grail. If we are able to keep somebody from being injured, that team will win at least one World Series because the margin of error is so much greater than they can go out and draft pitchers who have higher upside and keep them healthy, theoretically. And if you know you're not going to miss with pitchers, then maybe you take greater risks with hitters going for higher upside guys there too.
Tommy John surgery, named after the first major league pitcher to undergo the procedure in 1974, is officially known as ulnar collateral ligament reconstruction. It requires surgeons to transplant a tendon from a player's wrist or leg into his elbow to replace the torn ligament. According to Major League Baseball, 15 to 30 pitchers per year have undergone the procedure over the past few years. In 12 months, the player may be back on the mound. In 18 months, they may be back to full strength.
Those 18 months, though, are filled with the most grueling mental and physical rehabilitation an athlete can imagine. And the mental part, of course, is tougher than the physical part because you've been playing baseball your whole life. It is what you love to do, and your livelihood is taken away from you with the truth that you may never get back. 80% of people return to their previous level of competition, but the number isn't nearly that who return to their previous level of achievement. And I think that Tommy John surgery is just a so-and-go procedure. It couldn't be further from the truth.
Even so, one major league manager told Passan that Tommy John surgery was like a root canal, no big deal. Maybe we can expect big league players to go through it as part of the job. But what about kids? Passan says pitchers on the local high school team are at risk too.
When you hear that between 2007 and 2011, 56.8% of Tommy John surgeries were on 15 to 19-year-olds, you tend to get a little bit alarmed. The population that's coming into professional baseball right now, having gone through the year-round baseball that's emphasized, which leads to 5 times likelier an arm injury than those who don't play year-round. And the fact that they're participating in showcase events, which emphasize higher velocities, they either have scars on their elbow or their arms are ticking time bombs. So the idea of a healthy 18 or 19-year-old, it's almost an anachronism at this point.
Still, major league teams aren't scared away from those kids. Passan says over the last few years, perhaps half a dozen kids have been drafted in the first round and signed million-dollar contracts despite having had Tommy John surgery or needing it.
They're not scared off by it, and I don't quite get that. The lifespan of a new ulnar collateral ligament tends to be anywhere between 7 and 10 years. So the idea that this kid is going to be spending at least a couple of years in the minor leagues before he comes up, the chances are good that he's going to get hurt when he's in the big leagues and going to need a second Tommy John surgery, which doesn't have anywhere near the successful return rate as the 80% of the first time.
But most frighteningly, these days, it doesn't even start with teenagers. Talented kids who are even younger often play on several teams and may pitch far more than their arms can stand.
There was a study that came out recently from Japan on 62 9 to 12-year-olds, and 42% of them had damage seen by an MRI to their ulnar collateral ligament. And I believe it's 63% of the pitchers had damage to their UCL. These are little kids. These are 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th graders. And if it is starting that young there, then it is certainly starting that young here as well. And, I'm coaching 8, 9, and 10-year-olds this summer on my son's team, and I'm in charge of pitching. First year they're going to be pitching this year. And it scares me to death.
Passan says pitch limits for growing kids make sense. The young kids he coaches will never throw more than 30 pitches at a time, and the count will go up as they get older. But surprisingly, Passan says low pitch limits on major leaguers don't make much sense. He says the arms of professionals ought to be able to take it. Often managers are too cautious.
If a pitcher goes over 100 pitches in any outing, it's like there should be congressional intervention. And some of these arms are well capable of handling 120-plus pitches a game. I just think that we are so stuck inside of this culture of fear with baseball that it's tough to embrace a culture of knowledge that allows us to better understand what's going on.
The solution, Passan says, isn't in the major leagues. It's in the youth leagues, where kids are pushed far too hard too soon. You can find out more about Jeff Passan's book, The Arm, through links on our website, radiohealthjournal.net. Our production director is Sean Waldron. I'm Nancy Benson.
Medical notes this week. Oral health problems and pancreatic cancer are related, and scientists are trying to figure out how. They've known for some time that people battling pancreatic cancer are more likely to have gum disease and cavities. Now, a study presented to the American Association of Cancer Research shows that healthy people with a certain mix of bacteria in the mouth are nearly 60% more likely to develop pancreatic cancer later. Researchers are tracking the connection. Managers who inspire their employees to perform above and beyond the call of duty may be harming their workers' long-term health. A study in the journal Work and Stress finds that employees working under the so-called transformational managers do well in the short term, But over the next few years, employees end up being out sick more often than the norm and often show up for work even when they're sick. And finally, it appears that teenagers who stay up late to study may be doing their grades more harm than good. A study in the journal Sleep divided elite teenage students into two groups. One group was allowed to sleep 9 hours a night for a week, while the other group got only 5 hours of sleep per night. At the end of the trial, the sleep-deprived group had significant deterioration in attention, working memory, executive function, and alertness. Catching up on sleep over the weekend wasn't enough to fully reverse the effects. And that's Medical Notes this week. More in a moment.
Chronic pain affects many people's close friends or loved ones. For years, spinal cord stimulation has represented a life-changing option for some patients. Now, spinal cord stimulation therapy has taken another step forward with FDA approval of a new patient-centric system called the St. Jude Medical Proclaimed Spinal Cord Stimulation System. Dr. Judson Cook of Spine and Neurosurgery Specialists of Austin tells us more.
Until recently, spinal cord stimulation technology had only been incrementally improving. But with the new St. Jude Medical Proclaim system, my patients have a strong package of benefits like a battery that doesn't require recharging and upgradable technology while still receiving optimized spinal cord stimulation therapy.
To take the next step to learn more about the newly approved Proclaim Spinal Cord Stimulation System, go to poweroveryourpain.com/nextsteps. That's poweroveryourpain.com/nextsteps. Implementation of a spinal cord stimulation system can involve risk, such as painful stimulation, loss of pain relief, and surgical risks, such as paralysis during the implantation procedure. Patients should talk to their physician to determine if spinal cord stimulation therapy is right for them.
Thank you for listening to Radio Health Journal, a production of MediaTrax Communications. If you enjoyed this week's show, please leave a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. You can find more Radio Health Journal stories about health, science, and technology on iTunes, Stitcher, and at radiohealthjournal.net.